Did you know that China has the tag name infrastructure mechanic with more than 1,000 projects completed? This term is not disparaging. Rather, it reflects visitors' amazement at the country's rapid progress. Professor Allison from Harvard University addressed the rapid development of China in a speech using the phrase, "Everything is progressing so quickly that we don't even have time to be amazed. China has actually seen and heard its meteoric. All this has happened so fast, we haven't had time to be astonished," to make his point. In today's video, we'll show you why Chinese mega projects leave Americans in shock. But before we get started, we kindly ask that you show your support by liking and subscribing to China mega projects. We also value your opinions, so we encourage you to discuss these groundbreaking technologies in the comment section. Let's begin our fantastic voyage without further ado. Professor Allison used the example of a bridge in the state of Massachusetts in the United States that underwent repairs beginning in 2000 and lasting an expected 2 years. Professor Allison made the following statement. In 2014, they said it wasn't finished, and in 2050, they said it would take another year. Finally, last year's returns were above budget, so if it's not finished, we'll let you know when it's finished. However, in 2000, the Chinese opted to repair the Xinjiang Bridge in Beijing, which is far larger than the American bridge. Professor Allison questioned how long it took for them to finish the assignment, and the students responded that they were concerned with the 4050 number. Guess look at the replies 43 hours from now. Of course, they'll take place in New York. You heard that correctly. Of course, such a thing would never occur in New York in just 43 hours. These phrases accurately describe parts of China's infrastructure obsession that are just unrealistic. There's also a young guy by the name of Allison who paid a tourist visit to Dali, China in the year 2013. When he came back in the year 2015, he was shocked to see a crossing bridge that hadn't been there before. He exclaimed, "Wow, this is China's speed. But my friends, this only scratches the surface of China's infrastructural prowess." Please kindly click that subscribe button and like this video now. Fast forwarding, once again owing to difficulties with the newly built route, the Longyan railway station in the Fujian province had to be dismantled after lengthy debates in the year 2000 when China was demonstrating its power. To prevent disturbing regular traffic, specialists agreed to immediately transfer the whole station. The design was soon completed and building started. Don't just watch, subscribe and give us your thoughts on the Chinese mega projects. Follow along to learn the truth about this. Hope you're enjoying this ride. Let's delve deeper. The job was completed the next day at night with 1,500 employees and innumerable construction tools. In less than 9 hours, China finished an enormous infrastructure project that was 1.5 kilometers long. I'm sure we're hearing complaints about our transportation system and its subpar rail services once word of this spread to international media, but I'm just curious for the sake of argument. We should be considerably more creative considering how the Chinese accomplished similar tasks. They built an entire new station in only 9 hours by flooding it with thousands of employees. It didn't take 9 hours to talk about building infrastructure rather than forcing people to live in isolation in distant locations. They spent 9 hours constructing other people's knowledge. But now that you can see the movie I've prepared for you, everything works out. Many observers found it difficult to comprehend how China could pull off such a feat, demonstrating exactly how powerful China's infrastructure is. Let's look at several instances. China is the only nation in the world with 1.4 billion people who have access to power in every home. With $9.9 billion communication stations, it has the widest coverage of power grids in the whole world, placing it number 1 in the world. A total of 31,000 kilometers of high-speed rail are covered by China's network, which also has over 1 million highway and railroad bridges. The world's largest expressway network, at 131,000 kilometers, is also the largest in the world. It's important to note that China's first expressway, the Xinjiang Valley Expressway, was formally inaugurated in 1988. It's incredible to think that in less than 3 years, China moved from having no expressways to holding the top position in the world. Here's an interesting fact. It seems like they pressed the fast-forward button on development in 3 years. China consumed as much cement as the US did. That kind of fast development has grown commonplace in China over the course of over a century. Hope you're following and enjoying the ride. However, if we want to discuss China's propensity for building infrastructure, we have that. In the early years of China's creation, infrastructure wasn't exactly a top concern. Therefore, I don't think the United States did anything to teach China an important lesson. After all, they had only recently risen from a century of humiliation, and they were now preoccupied with fighting poverty and ensuring that everyone had enough to eat. With 400,000 kilometers of railways and 124,000 kilometers of motorways in engineering, the United States was stretching its infrastructural muscles. An astonishing $87.85 million tons of steel were manufactured in the US in 1950, enough to create marvels like the Hoover Dam and the Empire State Building. China only succeeded 610,000 times, but at the time, China's forerunners in the volunteer army battled the power of the United States. The 1st U.S. Marine Division was frantically trying to flee the Human Bridge during the Battle of Chosin Reservoir on December 5, 1950, and lucky for them, he was a vital escape route. But guess what? It was a struggle of wills, but the U.S., with its formidable capability, was able to transfer 8 sets of bridges weighing 8 tons each from Japan in only 2 days, and then built a giant all-steel 50-ton bridge without delay. As soon as the U.S. military engineers attempted to restore the bridge, the Chinese volunteer army blew it up. This happened repeatedly. And then they quickly fled. That image left a lasting impression on our forefathers in the volunteer army, and ever since, China has realized that it had to become stronger in order to avoid being attacked after the Korean War ended in 1953. Following the formal launch of its first 5-year plan, China made every attempt to catch up to the United States. They would consume one final meal if there was no money, and they would work hard to change if there was no technology. In the absence of machinery, Chinese laborers' hands transformed into excavators, and their shoulders became cranes. What a creative role model! China is truly remarkable. The China-Tibet Railway, the highest and longest genuine road on a plateau in the world, traversed the Tangela Mountains and saw formal construction start in 1988. Its greatest height was 5,072 meters. The majority of this space was situated in a region of harsh weather previously covering 150 kilometers of frozen land. Chinese scientists used techniques like creating bridges to support the road, then removing the roadbed and covering it with insulation panels to overcome this issue, since they believed that the frozen soil would surely cause harm to the road. Chinese order at the global level would include exploiting the chances presented by the great changes unseen in a century in ousting the United States as a superpower. In order to do this, it would be necessary to properly manage the primary danger resulting from the great changes, Washington's refusal to accept decline gracefully, by eroding the forms of control sustaining the American global order while bolstering those backing a Chinese alternative. In contrast to the frozen royal, however, the lack of oxygen, low temperatures, and ultraviolet radiation posed even greater challenges. For this reason, China invested almost 200 million yuan and established 15 medical support stations along the railway with more than 600 resident medical personnel through their tireless efforts. 453,000 patients have been treated at the Xinjiang Railway since it opened, without a single patient passing away. It took 26 years to build this miracle skyroad. Hope you're following. Yes, like the video. So let's continue with the speed of light. It represents an important turning point in China's history of infrastructure development by opening up the previously closed-off Xinjiang Plateau. China has transformed into a flying dragon, and its infrastructural strength has increased dramatically after 7 years of storms and changes. One of the most incredible examples is the building of the Washington and Liaoning hospitals in 20 when the terrible 19 epidemic first appeared. To combat the outbreak head-on, China needed a dedicated hospital, and boy did they deliver. The old Honey Washington Hospital was built in just 10 days, from January 23rd to the morning of February 2nd. If that wasn't incredible enough, 3 days later they finished deletions. This was a miracle, and it was the Chinese employees who made it happen. China has the world's most devoted workforce. Hospital in another 10 this sprint. These remarkable accomplishments made headlines across the world, and rightfully so. If it is infrastructure, leave it for China. The labor force is nothing short of miraculous. Everyday employees have broken so many global records that it has left Americans in awe. China is investing trillions of yuan in infrastructure, a boost that may help the second largest economy in the world well beyond the doom of COVID lockdowns and volatile real estate markets this year. According to Bloomberg calculations, based on official declarations, Beijing is making 6.8 trillion yuan, or about $1 trillion in government funding available for development projects. China is generating a lot of economic growth. According to some estimates, when bank financing and corporate funding are included, total spending might be 3 times greater. China resisted Western influences through rebellions meant to purge China of Westerners, treaties government peace with Western nations, and movements striving to change the government, despite the fact that several civil conflicts such as the Taiping Rebellion and the Boxer Rebellion were started. China resisted the influence of the West by starting conflicts with other nations. Britain disregarded China's warnings and continued smuggling opium into China, which led to the Opium War between those two countries. Because British technology was more sophisticated, China lost the battle. The Nanking Treaty, which brought in the prologue of unequal treaties, was signed by the two nations. China is fantastic. They stand for China's unity and exemplify the spirit of the country. The sole answer for why China is known as the infrastructure machine has you learning more about China's incredible engineering and building technology. They're equally deserving of memory and respect. All of the unfair accords increased China's vulnerability and bred mistrust among the populace, which resulted in several uprisings. China made its own reflections and started to advocate for the improvement of oneself. China rejected the influences from the West. China desired to be isolated because it was self-sufficient, even as it tried to reform the government and regulate peace with Western nations via signing treaties. However, several revolutions showed that it was hard to remain isolated within one's own environment without being influenced by outsiders. We would love to hear your thoughts and insights in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel to stay updated with more fascinating content. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!